My name is Chad Bingo Bongo, and I'm joined by my associate. My associate, please introduce yourself.
Hey, my name's Raft.
Raft over here is interested in a certain kind of sound. Raft, what kind of sound are we looking for today at the haberdashery?
Silica gel.
Yes, indeed. So if you have stolen clothing, bring it to this pointy-headed haberdashery, and we will gift you.
Empty those packets out of those new hats.
Into my whole mouth. I learned to unhinge my jaw for the silica gel. Bring it on. Thank you, and good night. Hello and welcome to Chatz, a television podcast, Season 5, DaisyChatz. My name is Alan, and I'm joined by the man who is less of a turncoat and more of a reversible jacket, Magellan.
Hey. Oh, you like this side? It's a black side, but look inside. Check it out. Now it's a nice woolen coat.
It's like a Rick and Morty bit where you're just like a conscious jacket who can't, like, it's just awkward and funny.
Just can't find
the
love.
Words. Aw, or love, yeah, but then you meet like a reversible bag and you're like, oh, honey, climb
like
inside.
A pair of tearaway pants or something.
Tearaway pants. I haven't thought about tearaway pants in 5 minutes, dude. God.
That's probably because you took your tearaway pants off 5 minutes ago.
I have to wear tearaway underwear for the podcast.
Prescription.
You would be surprised the shit that people get as prescription, man. People are like, hey, can I get like a whole ass humidifier prescribed to me?
Yeah.
It's like, nah, can I get a cane? How about, can I get like a bottle? None of these are fake. This is not a bit. These are all true.
Yeah.
This is a podcast of truth. It is called DaisyChatz. I'm joined by Magellan. This is Alan. We're talking about Pushing Daisies.
The TV show.
The TV show. The show about a TV show. Why don't we just call it Chatz, a show about shows?
Chatz. Welcome to Chatz, a show about shows.
Yeah, isn't that kind of snappier and like TED Talky?
Yeah, it is kind of TED Talky.
Yeah, TED Talky.
Yeah.
Has
this ever happened to you? Well, I guess I don't start TED Talks that way.
Imagine this. You're recording a podcast and it's about TV. Now, what if...
Oh my God. I teach 11th grade history.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time students have gotten to 11th grade, they've developed a few writing habits that at some point, like a middle school teacher told them were good.
Oh, yeah, I was that person.
But are not good. So, like, I have one student I had one student in the past school year who he started every single essay with the phrase, imagine a world.
Oh, no.
Without fail. Even when I was like, don't do that, he still did it.
He's like, but imagine a world in which I didn't do it, and you're like,
you're just not imagining it, Mr. Fluke.
You're not. You have to imagine it. I had that. Yeah, everyone has those habits early on where it's just like, I figured out writing. Like I saw, like, because you think of solving writing the way you solve math.
Right.
So you're like, I found the way that I write, which is that I start with this and then I do it. Like, it's like a hamburger. That's the way you write literally everything, is you do a beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
And, like, some of those rules are good because they're broad enough that they work. But then some of them are like, don't start your essay.
Well, and it gets you the grade and it gets you through the test and all that. But then in the real world, like, if you do anything professionally that requires you to write something, people are going to not like it because they're like, we all know that formula that you're doing.
Right. Yeah, all writing after, like, post-academic writing, and even, like, late academic writing is, like, we want to know that you're a person with thoughts and, like, your own unique opinion and that you're not following a template.
I mean, you shouldn't be writing hamburgers in sophomore year of college.
Exactly, right.
Anyway.
Unless you're, like, taking a food history class, then you should definitely be writing about hamburgers.
I'd love to take a food history class. That sounds so interesting.
I feel like a food history class is something that would exist in Pushing Daisies, a show about a man named Ned.
I just had an idea for like a history class. It's all about different eras of immigration to the United States.
Yep.
But framed around like popular food that we know that
Oh,
came with
boy.
certain groups of people, and like using old like cookbooks to
teach and the different recipes and how they're written. Oh my God, that's a good idea.
Doesn't that sound like a cool class?
That does sound like a cool class.
Yeah. I wish I could just like imagine a class and that it exists. Anyways, yeah, you're trying really hard to get us on topic.
It's okay. I mean, hey,
I'm fighting you, man.
No, I love it. I love the fight. It's part of the battle.
Yeah,
is the fight. I want to talk about Pushing Daisies. We watched 2 episodes this week. The first one was season 2, episode 10, The Norwegians, and the second one was season 2, episode 11, Window Dressed to Kill. First, we're going to be discussing The Norwegians, which was written by Scott Niemerfo, directed by Trisha Brock, and it aired December 17th, 2008. Magellan, what happened this episode?
The facts were these. Ned, Chuck, and Emerson May have finally met their match. 3 rival Norwegian private investigators start to snoop around while up upon the case of the seemingly mysterious death of one Dwight Dixon, commissioned by Vivian Charles to determine the fate of her Of her bay.
Yeah, let me just really quickly fix that and
touch that up for the modern kids.
Yep. For the not 10 years ago people. Magellan, what did you think of The Norwegians?
I enjoyed this episode. It is one of those rare cases where there is an episode-long arc of tension where you're actually worried about a certain thing happening or not happening. Because I think it's really easy in these kind of procedural shows for there to be invented tensions. Like, oh no, Chuck got kidnapped by the villain of the week. What's going to happen? Well, she's going to get saved and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But in this one, this whole show, every episode is like, hey, guess what? Plucky, quirky private investigators solve all crimes. They're really good at solving crimes. And now in this episode, a bunch of plucky, quirky private investigators are investigating our main characters. And so maybe they're going to find something out. And it's a believable thing to wonder about throughout the episode of what exactly are they going to discover? What exactly are they going to surface? What revelations or conversations are going to come out of that? Because it relates to the sort of season-long arcs. So because of that, I was engaged and invested in the sort of like fun thing of the week plot because it was so closely tied to the main overarching narrative. The other thing is that no, I think that's it. Yeah, that's my thought. I was engaged and I enjoyed it. What about you?
Yeah, I would argue to say I even love this episode. Yeah, you mentioned the format being really different, and I think that works, especially this late into the series. Like, this episode comes before a huge break, like a almost 6-month break of television in the show because...
Right, I forgot about that.
Right, this one's December, and the next one is May of the following year.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like them going, all right, well, let's flip the script. You know, we're running low in the season. We want to... we're kind of pushing past the Charles stuff, moving into whatever is coming next. Like, let's tell a story about our characters and not have them investigate something, but instead, or like investigating something, but the focus is on them.
Yeah. This episode makes more sense if you think about it as like a mid-season finale.
Totally.
That's probably why that gap was so big. Maybe they thought they were coming back with 10 more episodes or something, and the run got reduced.
It's very possible, yeah. It's entirely possible. There's just so much I don't know about the production of this show that I'd love to like be able to look into more, but alas. And speaking of things that feel kind of mid-season finale-ish, we kind of got what like one of the darker Ned flashbacks to start this episode off.
Yeah.
He's at the Longborough School for Boys, and he convinces his buddy Eugene to come play war in the woods, and they just find like we're gonna like play fake guns or whatever. They find a deer hunter, just dead, and that's already dark. Like there are entire novels written about young boys finding dead bodies in the woods. Stand By Me. And then Eugene runs away. Ned is like, wait, sick, crime. I think I love solving crimes. But it doesn't go well. Like, this actually really works to set up Ned's conflict in both of these episodes, which is that he is starting to get away from wanting to just be a crime solver.
Yeah.
And not use his powers in that way. So he brings this guy back. He's like, oh, let's find out why you were murdered. And the guy's like, I fell on my gun. And
I was not murdered.
I'm just dumb. And then he's like, wow, bummer. Touches the guy conveniently right when the police come. And this like 8-year-old kid goes to jail. Him and Eugene go to jail because they were on the scene of the crime. Which, I mean, like, that's probably juvie, obviously, right? But Eugene gets busted out by his nice parents. It's cool seeing Eugene's parents.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of nice that not both of them are like cartoon Indian stereotypes. I think it was just like the dad who was like, looks like my friend's uncle. But the mom was just like a mom. And then Ned doesn't get busted out because he doesn't have somebody to bust him out.
Right.
Which is sad. But it puts us in, like, what I really appreciate about these flashbacks and the concept of flashbacks is that you get the interiority of a character without it having to be, like, subtextual. It's just like, no, this was a thing that really happened that set him on the path to eventually think in the way that we see in the present.
Yeah, and there's not another good way to tell about a character's past either. Because if Ned was just like, well, Chuck, I started asking dead people why they died because I wanted to impress my dad. And there was this one time, there's a hunter. You're like,
yeah.
But this is a little more interesting because it's being visually presented. I sort of found it hard to buy that like they're putting this little boy into this jail cell.
Yes.
But you know, whatever. I'll take it. Yeah, and I don't know how I feel about the feels like a retcon that the reason that Ned was interested in solving crimes was so that his dad would think he was cool. But I guess it makes sense. Like he bakes pies because of his mom and he solves crimes because of his dad. I'll buy it. That's
right.
Fine.
The two like key aspects of who he is in the present come from his relationship to his family. But yeah, it's just like this one being the first crime he solved because he was like, this seems interesting, is a little bit artificial. Although it does put him in the same sort of box as Emerson writing Lil Gumshoe, where like he's writing Lil Gumshoe so that his daughter will see him in the news and go, I should do that, but with my dad. And in young Ned's case, he is solving crimes so that his dad will see him in the news and be like, I should be with my son again. So there's a little bit of parallelism there, but it doesn't really, it's not like a really, I don't think we needed a satisfying explanation for why Ned likes solving crimes. The reason he likes solving crimes is because that's because of itself.
Because it's freaking cool, bro.
Right. Maybe he read like the Hardy Boys as a kid, like we did. And it was like, oh, or, you know, I want it to just be like that. And speaking of Emerson, I mean, the next like big scene that I really liked was Vivian, of all people. And Vivian approaches him in his office. And requests that he investigate the murder of Dwight Dixon. And he's pushing back really, really hard against this, like aggressively so to the point where he basically tells her, don't worry about this guy. He's probably gone forever. I'm not going to tell you he's dead, but like, do not investigate Dwight Dixon. Not worth your time. Bad idea. Get out of my office. Not realizing that he has immediately implicated himself because the real Emerson Codd would never deny easy money, like a local murder that he knew the guy and it would have been like a freebie for him. Yeah. So of course this attracts the attention of the Norwegians, Magnus Olstadter, Hedda Lillehammer, and Nils Nilsson. Like just the best. Those are like the quintessential Norwegian names. Nils Nilsson is my favorite. And they are detectives who Vivian hires because she's like, something seems up, and you should probably investigate the investigator. In general, though, what did you think about the Norwegian? I called them the Norwegian pie holers in my notes. What did you think about them?
I liked the narrative purpose that they served, and I enjoyed the costuming. I enjoyed their backstory. Just the idea that like the reason that they're in the United States is because there aren't enough murders in Norway for them to solve. So that was funny. Their van being called Mother, I didn't really get that, like why it was called that, except to make this MILF joke.
Exact. I think it's just that, but it's a
But like
bummer.
that's not a joke. It's just
It's one visual gag.
yeah. And also that Wikipedia summary that we read last week made it seem like a way bigger plot point than it is. It's like not. It doesn't matter at all. But their accents were just bad.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
Just
yeah.
not good.
It's very
jarring.
clearly 3 Americans doing accents, right?
Yeah, and like somebody came in and was like, "Hey, a Norwegian accent, you've got to sort of replace these consonants with these other consonants, and these vowels sound like this." And on that day when they did the Norwegian accent workshop, they were probably all wonderful. And then at different rates, each of them slipped out of that accent over time. And so it's not as good.
The actress who plays the Hedda is actually from Yugoslavia, but she lived most of her life in America. So just to correct myself ahead of time there. But and I mean, like, Orlando Jones is like the funny guy from Mad TV doing like a really serious Norwegian character.
Right. Yeah.
Just feels very. And then Michael Weaver is Canadian, so like these are not the people to do these accents.
Yeah.
So like I think your options here would be either make their accents like extremely cartoonish and make that like the joke. Like there are some forms of accent humor that I think are legitimately funny and don't feel like they are necessarily appropriative or offensive. Like it's just like, I like your accent and I think it's interesting and you're saying serious stuff to me in a funny accent. That can work. Or just like have Norwegian actors do this and don't make them put on any accent, and then it just works. But like this weird middle ground of like these are like clearly comedians, American comedic actors doing like serious Norwegian characters with bad attempts at the accent is like just kind of obnoxious and not fun to listen to.
Yeah, I think, and it doesn't, like the cartoonish thing, it doesn't have to even be like a cartoonish Norwegian accent, just like a strong, clear choice. Because there were moments where it was hard to tell how much of an accent one of them was even using.
Right.
And so that's what was jarring and not so great about it. Is you're like, are you trying to do a character or are you not? Just commit to one or the other. And
exactly.
And then it'll be good. But
I
liked them overall, and I thought they were a fun group.
Regarding the MILF, though, the mobile, God, what is it?
Yeah, dude, tell me more about
the MILF. Now. Mobile Investigation LF.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that thing. I think most of my notes in this episode were me like analyzing things about it that the episode is not presenting as worth analyzing. Like the car is only narratively justified if you think about it as like the Norwegian pie holders are supposed to parallel our main cast.
Yeah.
Not that they're differentiated enough as like this one's Olive, this one's Chuck, and this one is Ned. It's more just like these are investigators doing serious things using something that gives them an edge over the rest of everyone else.
Yeah.
Like the MILF is technically their version of Ned's power. So instead of fairy tale magic, it's like we fill the truck with cameras and really good computers, and sometimes it prints out a receipt on my belt that tells me like, hey, this guy's lying.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like their advantage, and it's I think it's a really common sort of trope to have the villains who are like the evil version of our main cast. Like their special thing is like we have money and or technology, whereas you don't. Like you're doing it from your bootstraps. You're doing it from a power that you were born with, and we're doing it with a car that we got.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't really go beyond that. And it's true, like you said earlier, it seemed from the summary like that car was going to like make something happen in this episode, but it kind of just gives them a slight edge. And they have a lie detector, basically.
It just feels like the kind of thing where it made a lot of sense in the writer's room why the thing is called Mother and why they're like high-tech Norwegian people. But then those things don't really come across very clearly in the episode. And so it just sort of, it feels like just a part of their quirkiness, which is maybe the point, that it just is supposed to give them a different feel or a different approach. It doesn't feel particularly Norwegian, but they're high tech. So I don't really get that. It also doesn't feel particularly Norwegian that they like call their van mother. And so then there are a bunch of joke lines that are like, go back crying to your mother, or your mother has left you. It's like, okay, I guess those are funny, but just the base thing doesn't make sense. So it's not actually that funny.
Right. It doesn't serve that purpose as like making them unique or distinct in much of any way.
Yeah. Like it just seems kind of random.
I mean, hey man, I thought the Norwegian stuff was fine, but really, like the thing that made this episode shine for me was Olive.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm starting to think that Olive is like, I mean, I've thought often that she's like probably my favorite character, but I'm kind of locking into that position now because like she has so much development, even in just this episode, where she's realizing through her conversations with Vivian and like her lack of conversation with the pie holders that like she is an extra on a TV show.
Right. Yeah.
She is a side character, and she's coming into that realization in a really mature and believable way. It's like, it's really heavy having her say the line of like, "Aren't you tired of feeling like you have to live your life from the outside?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh, Olive, stop!" Every time Kristen Chenoweth gets one of those lines, I want to cry. They're just so good. Like she even follows that up with this like amazing little speech that she gives to the aunts, where she's talking about her distance from the rest of the gang and comparing it to like breaking alliances and like taking control in a relationship. And it's just like Olive knows, like Olive is no longer letting this problem, her like a relationship to Ned, define her, and she's like trying to become her own person.
Yeah.
And man, it's just really like entertaining to watch. It's really like making the payoff of this show so worth it to see that finally come.
And
to
she's
fruition.
comparing herself to Vivian, because both of them have this frustration about people are keeping a secret from me because they want to protect me, but I don't want to be protected. I just want to know what the hell is going on. That's all I want. And so this episode really speaks to how unreasonable and ultimately harmful it can be to hide something from someone because you think it's good for them. Because ultimately people should have the right to choose for themselves what they want to know or don't want to know. And so it's a powerful moment for Olive to say, you know what? Fuck this. They're treating me like a second-rate friend instead of really fully including me in everything that they do. And I'm not going to stand for it anymore. And Vivian has the same reaction to Lily.
To Lily, exactly. Like, it's very parentalist of the gang when she walks up to them to be like, she's like, "Oh, hey guys, are we talking about crimes and like covering our asses from the Norwegians?" And they're like, "Oh no, Olive, take our pie orders and then leave. Don't worry about it. We're gonna take care of it."
Yeah.
And Chuck is like, "Is this mean? Are we being mean to Olive?" And then Ned is immediately like, "No. It's good that she doesn't know these things because we don't want her to be involved. That would be bad for her." And it's this very like controlling, like, I don't trust her agency enough that she could help. I would rather she be completely kept out of the loop.
Exactly.
Because I want to protect her and keep her safe. And it's like,
yeah, it reflects pretty poorly on Ned.
For sure, man. Yeah.
Because it's sort of, I appreciate that this show confronts the fact that Ned is kind of manipulative. Like with Chuck's dad looking at the rules and saying, this is nuts that you're making my daughter do this. Controlling is exactly the right word. Like he wants things to be a certain way, and Emerson is controlling too. He's just more direct about it than Ned is. But it's something that the show isn't afraid to confront and to acknowledge that Ned is. I think you said it perfectly. Like he doesn't trust Olive. He doesn't trust that she's going to do something helpful. when he should. If they're really friends and he really values her, then he should be able to trust that she's like not going to freak out when she learns about his magic power, and she's not going to like tell the press or something.
Right, exactly. And this comes to a beautiful head in the second episode, but for now it's just like Olive is bringing this conversation to Vivian and Lily, and like watching their relationship kind of have a lot of friction and tension, and it's just super sad.
Yeah.
She even says, like, the line that she says to them that kind of makes it apparent that there is a problem in their like sisterhood is, "Congratulations, Lily. I know how you like to be right."
Oof.
And she's just talking about like their dynamic is Lily is the one with the better ideas, but she's bitter about the world, and Vivian is like optimistic and wants things to be good and lets herself be heartbroken all the time. And she's like, "Yeah, that's your dynamic, guys. Here it is, laid out in front of you." And then both realizing that is like just another gut wrencher. Like,
yeah.
Oof.
And she just wanted Dwight to be a nice guy that she could be happy with, and thought that Lily didn't like him because of that. It makes you wonder if there's a part of Vivian that knows what Lily did, you know?
About Dwight, you mean? Or about
no. About
about her husband?
Yeah, about Charles.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a thing that we're gonna find out. I hope it is, kind of. I think that's one of the last big things.
Yeah.
It is kind of bringing that arc to a close, but yeah, their relationship in this episode ends up in a kind of spot, and it bums me out because I love them so much, but it's also really good television.
Yeah, I mean, just that exchange again, like you said, Lily, I know how you like being right, and then Lily says a couple lines later, "I don't get any satisfaction," or however she phrases it, "I don't get any satisfaction from seeing you hurt." And then Vivian says, "Now I really don't believe you."
Right. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's funny that this is like I mean, it's not funny, but this is a wacky fairy tale show. But the thing I'm going to take from it and remember from it is like, oh, and then it just got like really sad and like had a lot of very true, heartbreaking shit about like relationships and family by the end of it. That like hit extremely close to home over and over again every episode.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's most of the stuff that I have here. We learn a lot of kind of show-wide stuff. I said here, fitting of a detective novel. Olive and Ned find themselves in a van driving with no brake, driving off of a cliff.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, something out of like a dime store novel, and then they are saved by a mysterious masked man, and you're like, oh man, it's gonna be. And like, I figured it was just gonna be Dwight. I was like, that makes logical sense, or some that doesn't make logical sense, but like, who else is gonna, or it's gonna be Charles, like,
yeah,
apologizing for his crimes by coming back and saving him at the right time. But I mean, we find out in the very last shot of the episode that that's not. I mean, it's Ned's dad, you guys.
Yeah. I like that twist.
Yeah, it's
just
like that's the best way to do that twist, right?
Because I didn't want it to be Charles. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. And doesn't make sense for it to be Dwight Dixon. So who else but Ned's dad?
And we saw Ned's dad like early in the season, really briefly. So immediately canceling out my theory, by the way, that we're never going to see Ned's dad's face, because his face is like clearly shown for 1 second at the end of this episode.
Yep.
He's just a guy with like a nose and a face and everything. Yeah. So that was a pretty cool twist. There were a lot of cool lines though, but I think plot wise, basically the Norwegians arriving at the pie hole, and they have this whole thing with Olive, which like vaguely reads of like some weird nationalism, where they're like, oh, we know you're good because we found out that you have, like, Mother told us you have pure Norwegian blood in you. And you're like, oh.
Right. She's sort of like blonde-haired, bright-eyed. And you're like, oh, what is like, this Eurocentrism that we're seeing right now?
Yep. This is extremely yikes. Yeah. And, like, we're going to let her in. And she's like, yeah, Bork to Bork, guys. Love it. Yay. And they're like, wow, yeah, you're great. So they start trusting her, but she tries to get out, and then they have the whole truck driving out of the car scene, falling off the cliff. Was there anything else big that happened at the end of this episode? Because I'm feeling like I don't really have a good end of the third act written down.
Well, just that. So when the Norwegians went to the graveyard to look for Charles's body and Chuck's body, they find both coffins empty, which is a surprise because only Chuck's should have been empty. Her dad's should have had Dwight Dixon in it, I believe.
Yes. Yep.
And so that's freaking us out because we're like, where's Dwight Dixon? What's up with Dwight Dixon? Then later we find that he is sort of staged in his motel room as being dead there. And all the clues point the Norwegians to think, oh, well, he was a grave robber and he burned the bodies and he just kind of died. And that's it. So that's the case.
Isn't that the part where the narrator goes, the facts were not these?
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa.
Cute. Very cute.
Wow, because it's all like, perfectly planted evidence. And then they're like, wow, great, we did it. Bye-bye. Goodbye. We're off the show now. Which is like, all right, bye, Norwegians. You didn't have much to do other than be antagonists. And then they all freak out about that whole thing, and then they come back to the pie hole. Chuck blames herself about a lot of stuff. Ned's like, I didn't want anyone else to fight my battles. And then it turns out, his dad's there. Hey, hello, Dad. We're not going to deal with you next episode at all. They're really just going to push that to the final episode, aren't they? They're just going to do that.
Yeah. They're just, yep.
We're going to do like a couple more mystery plots, and then we're going to just bring the dad back. But he's right there. Like, whatever. That is what happens in this episode. Did you have any stray notes, Magellan?
Yes. The flashback at the beginning with Ned being in the jail cell, the narrator goes, "For in jail, as in life, he had to take responsibility for his actions," which sounds really deep, but is not at all. Like, that's not a good transition, narrator man. Lot of great wordplay. In this episode. One of them was Ned's talking about like, I'm a baker who wakes the dead, and then he says like, change of career, no more waking or baking. That's just funny. And then so real, Chuck's just like, I just want to hold your hand in response to that, which is like a real thing that a real person in a nice relationship would say. He says, me too, and then the camera tilts and they're both caressing Emerson's hands.
The brilliance before the
know that he was at the table at the time.
Right. The brilliance of that scene right before we cut to Emerson, like, it's not comedy until we see Emerson. It's like, you can imagine maybe they're just putting their hands next to each other really close because they're like wanting to feel that, and it sets up a moment in the next episode. But like, then they cut to Emerson, like the camera's like, no, this is a joke, this is funny, and we cut to Emerson, and it's like, oh yes, we're having a good time. Like, yeah, but it was a heavy moment right up until then.
Yeah, I had the question about why don't they just tell Olive stuff right before I realized, oh, that's what Olive's arc is in this episode, because she goes on and says, I'm not some, after they give their orders, she says, I'm not some yo-yo you can jerk up and down on a today let's include her and tomorrow let's not basis, or whatever she said. So that was a surprising moment of, you know what? Screw this. Things are going to be different today. That I liked.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Vivian, a line that I liked when she was talking to Emerson about Dwight Dixon. Emerson says, did you two have intimate relations? And she goes, very long walks, clarinet concertos. Oh, it's so sweet. I love Vivian. Olive says to Chuck's like, we're trying to protect you. And Olive says, I don't need protection. That's what I have several long-standing restraining orders for.
Right, good line.
Have we as a society confronted the fact that we like really like to make jokes about restraining orders?
Well, you know what it is? Yeah, I don't think we've confronted it. No, I think the problem is like, it's sort of like how we always talk about how they used to make gay jokes because it was harder to confront the fact that like gay people exist and are valid than it was to just like make a goof that references them. Like, people do have restraining orders against other people. And sometimes that doesn't work, and people can break them all the time, and it's a really like murky legal situation. But like, yes, it is easier to make dumb jokes like this, and it sucks, but people still do that to this day. That has not really changed.
It's just, and it sounds really fucking scary. Like the concept of this person, I don't
Legally
want them
can't.
to be around me so much that the law is involved.
Right, totally. The fact that they exist is weird. The fact that, they're jokies. Yeah, it's all...
I don't know. There's just a lot of jokes in shows about restraining orders. And
Yes, that's very true.
I'm not saying we have to stop making the jokes. I just think we haven't really thought about how often it happens.
Right.
Let's see. The Lily and Vivian exchange.
I had another brief line about the Norwegians that I really liked, where they take Olive, and then everyone else finds out, and they're kind of freaking out briefly, but then it seems like she's okay, and then Chuck is like, "Oh, maybe it's Stockholm syndrome," and I've never been so in love with Chuck and mad at the writers at the same time. I'm like, "You're so happy you wrote that down. You high-fived someone for that line."
Yeah.
So good.
I love the scene where Emerson is bullshitting the Norwegians to buy time. And he says, "Detective work is a lot like money. It doesn't come with instructions. I learned that from the greatest detective of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Shaft. You can dig it." And they're like, "Oh, yes. Take notes
Shaft.
on this Shaft
Yes.
guy." Then we cut to Ned and Chuck trying to break into the van, and Chuck is like, "Whoever said spontaneity is sexy? Sexy's a man with a to-do list." And then she goes on and names some other stuff. I feel pretty good about that. I got a to-do list. I'm not a very spontaneous guy, so not bad.
I love to-do lists. I love Todoist.
Todoist is a great app. Everybody should check it out.
Also pay us, please.
Pay us, please. Yeah, which has nothing to do with Todoist, but while you're on the internet,
Right.
No.
Todoist, the company, should pay us because we love their app.
Oh.
But also pay us.
Gotcha.
Just pay it. Just in general. Just pay us.
Gotcha. I get it. Something I noticed is a cliche pet peeve of mine in this episode. So Chuck and Ned are going to break into the van, and they're like, "All right, here we go." And Ned's like, "All right, I'm going to break in, and you're going to stay here and keep watch. This is my problem. I need to fix it." I'm realizing I hate it when characters tell other characters to hang back from something dangerous, because it's just invariably the other character is like, "No, I'm going with you," or they're like, "All right, if that's what you've got to do," and all of that I just am sick of.
And if they stay back, then they're the one who gets attacked, and if they go forward, then it's like someone gets hurt. It's always that's like the setup for that bit every single time.
Yeah. I thought it was cute that Ned and Olive, when they were in this careening van, Ned was answering yes or no questions. That was a fun way to get around, him having to tell her something. When they're hanging from the branch, Olive says, "Thank God for my naturally clingy nature."
It's one of those lines, man. The show is just packed with those lines.
Emerson and Vivian in their final exchange at the end. First of all, Emerson's being very sweet with her. And then she says something about, like, "You gave me the old heave-ho earlier."
Oh, God.
And then Emerson was like, "Well, if I did any ho heaving, it was like for your own good," or something like that.
That was totally going to be my last thing. This is my favorite exchange in all of Pushing Daisies so far.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read this. Vivian Charles says, "Mr. Codd, I'm here against my better judgment, considering the callous braggadocio with which you previously gave me the heave-ho." And Emerson says, "Well, if I did do any ho-heaving, it was for your own good. There's a time for callous braggadocio and a time for sensitivity. To the Norwegians, that time is never." And then Vivian Charles with the sharpest delivery of all time. "I suppose it's a holdover from their Viking ancestry. It would be difficult to rape and pillage with the subtlety of a humanist." And it's like, bam, bam, shots, shots. Yes, you did it. You got the line out. That's so good. It's not like it's the rhythm of it. It is the writing of it. Everything about that line is like, oh, mwah, chef's kiss.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
So good.
And that's it. That's all I got.
That concludes our discussion of the Norwegians. We'll be right back to discuss emergency last minute email time. Emergency last minute email. Hey guys, it's Alan and Magellan. We have an email this week. It's from our buddy Dan. Magellan, hi.
Yay. Hey, man.
Let's read this email. It's from our friend
Okay.
Dan. Dan says, "One of the things that always bugged me about the show, even when it was aired, was the weird power imbalance between Ned and Chuck. Historically, there's been this weird socio-sexual dynamic between men and women that usually goes unspoken, but often shapes women's lives in a bunch of small and occasionally large ways. There's a presumed quid pro quo that when a man does a favor, that the woman, is somehow obligated to reciprocate in a way that she might not be comfortable with, usually in the form of having to feign interest. It's fucked, but it's there, and I would ask any guy to examine himself to make sure he's helping people for the right reasons. As people become more socially conscious, I think this sort of mentality will fade away. But in the meantime, it's one of the myriad of things that we sort of unwillingly inflict upon women. Good points. These are all true facts. One of the troubling aspects is that the bigger the favor offered, the bigger the expected reciprocity is supposed to be. You hold a door for a woman, a coy smile will do. But you buy her a coffee, and a phone number is the very least a small price to pay. Most women have learned to avoid this by avoiding favors from strangers, and it's gross and it's fading, but the scale of it between Ned and Chuck, if could be presumed, is at the ultimate level. If buying a coffee supposedly gets you a number, what does bringing you back from the dead earn? This dynamic has always bothered me about this relationship. Can Chuck even separate her own feelings for Ned from whatever she feels like she may owe him? You were talking about memes on the last episode. Frick, sorry. You were talking memes on the last episode, and I lost my place. Oh, and this one feels like it came dangerously close to the classic because of the implication, which I looked up, and it's that Always Sunny thing.
Yeah, with the boat and stuff.
Yes. I suppose that the episode The Legend of Merlin McQuatty makes the case that Chuck is with Ned for the right reasons, and not because he has the power of life or death over her in a way that doesn't actually exist, and that no human should have over another. But is she in the position to clearly see the difference? Obviously, she can only do what she thinks is best, and doing as her father says just feels like a different power imbalance being played. But I'm glad that the show addresses it, though I wish it would have happened sooner. And then he concludes, wandering down that dark path, I feel the need to say the reason I tuned into this show when it originally aired was because the ads claimed that it was from the creator of Wonder Falls, who most people didn't recognize, but I got excited about because Wonder Falls has its own weird niche and its own odd charm, and I was ready for more of that, especially learning that one of its secondary stars, Lee Pace, was the star. I couldn't wait. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Fantastic email.
Yeah.
For us to be thinking about.
Some pros in there.
Yeah.
It's something we talked about, but we're obviously not fully equipped to speak to both sides. But yeah, for sure. No doubt. Unspoken, weird, transactional nature to a lot of these types of relationships that is harmful and, like I said, imbalanced. But I think what we talked about, what we noticed at least early on in this show, was that, and especially in season 1, it felt like their relationship was not it didn't seem imbalanced. It seemed pretty even.
Yeah.
But that's also maybe just because they never talked about it explicitly in that way until this whole thing with her dad, where he's like, hey, it's weird that you're not going anywhere because this guy brought you back to life and you feel like you owe him.
Yeah. I think what is tough about this is that since the show is such a fairy tale storybook depiction of their love, we as an audience are not expected or asked at any moment to question if they really love each other and why they would really love each other.
Right.
Like almost immediately when she's back, it's like, oh yeah, we haven't seen each other since we were kids, but we are the one for each other, and that is without question. That is the basis of the whole show. So the show has kind of avoided really approaching what Dan has brought up here because of the way that honestly it's oversimplifying and romanticizing their love so that it can tell stories of them being in love and how they navigate that. But it is essential, I think, to talk about if you are going to think about this premise critically for even a few minutes. Because yeah, it's hard to point to a moment in this show where Chuck has made a genuine choice to be with Ned or to not be with Ned, except yes, for this most recent part where her dad gave her the choice. But even that doesn't, I expressed some misgivings about that, because even that didn't really feel like a true decision that she was making. It sort of was like two, and I think you talked about this, like two people are kind of forcing her to choose between these two different options.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not like picking something for herself because she wants that. So I don't know. I mean, I think ultimately there are other empowering narratives and stories that we can draw out of this about like being in a relationship and being in a committed relationship and how you navigate that the show is good for. And this show is maybe not so good for examining what Dan's talking about with those implicit power dynamics or implicit like gendered expectations of reciprocity for certain actions that are taken. So there is this that element of like toxic masculinity that the show is not really equipped to criticize. Yeah, that's something that we need to acknowledge. But ultimately, like the show is not equipped for us to say much more about it than that.
Right. And end of the day, it's a show that's doing so much, but the fact that like this is the core relationship of the show and we have this is like that's a very valid criticism,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
you can obviously like it and not like despite that, I still like a lot of things about the show, even though I think that's like a big problem that like honestly it's not something that I could see. Like a lot of times I'm like, oh, this character is not great for this reason, but they could get better over the show. And like this is a thing that they'd really have to like commit to talking about in order for me to turn around on my opinion of it. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it also there is a kind of like Dan is speaking about this from the perspective of a man is doing something for a stranger and expects some kind of reciprocity, but there is also a feeling sometimes when you're in a long-term relationship that like you do owe something to the other person. Like if you've gone through significant hardship together, or like I can think of like a friend of mine who um and this is like I'm sort of like taking the particulars of her life and abstracting it, but like let's say for example a friend of mine had a battle with cancer and like was with the person that she's with now through that, and like maybe they really love each other, but imagine a scenario in which like someone is with you through a battle with cancer and then you make it through, and then your relationship kind of like hits a hard time or you're starting to doubt it. And maybe part of you is like, yeah, but they were here during this, and so maybe that means something, or means that I should spend more time like trying to patch things up or fix
right.
things. I don't know. So like, or anything, or like the death of a family member, or uh, other things like that. Like long-term relationships, you're going to hit a point where somebody has something really tough happen to them and the other person sticks it out with them, and so it does feel like you owe them something, or it can feel like that if you're not really deliberate about making sure that doesn't play into like why you're staying in the relationship or what you're doing in the relationship.
Good points across the board.
Yeah, so it's a good thing to keep in mind. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, very good stuff. We are gonna again take it to that quick little musical break, and then we are going to be back to discuss Window Dress to Kill.
Welcome back to DaisyChatz. The second episode we watched this week was Season 2, Episode 11, Window Dressed to Kill. Or Window Dressed to Kill. Or Window Dressed to Kill. Was that the same as the first way I did it?
I
Window
think so,
Dressed
kind
to
of.
Kill.
It's either window, comma, dress to kill, or window hyphen dress to kill. Those
Window
are the two ways you
hyphen
pronounce
dressed hyphen to kill hyphen. Written by Abby Goenter. Directed by Julie Ann Robinson. Mrs. Robinson. Or Miss Robinson. And it aired on May 30th, 2009. Alan, what happened in Window Dressed to Kill?
The facts were these. When half of a window designer duo is murdered, Chuck and Emerson must figure out who did it, without the help of Ned. Meanwhile, the pie maker continues to battle with the decision not to use his power anymore, and two prisoners burst back into Allah's life, looking for some help. This episode is... I mean, the fact that I took a breath and I was like, wait, are we still doing this podcast? This one's fine. And
Yeah.
I always feel bad about the Chatz effect, where because we watch 2 episodes of a show every week. The second one,
Yeah.
I feel like often gets the short shrift. So I've been
Yeah.
making a bigger effort in the last couple of seasons to like really like write things about the second one, but I never have anything to say. It's like these shows are in patterns or something.
I think it's just that second episode has to do more to keep my interest. Like, I can think of past episodes of other shows we've done where the second episode is just undoubtedly a better episode, and so it shines regardless. Like, thinking all the way back to when we were doing Scape Chats, and we talked about a human reaction. And it's
That
like
was the second one?
one of the best episodes of Farscape. Yeah, it was like episode 10 or something.
Oh, man.
And so that was like an amazing conversation because it's an amazing episode. But if the episode is just kind of fine, like this one is, then I was tuning out a little bit because it was just fine. There wasn't a lot to it. And also this episode, again, we've mentioned a few times, this is airing in May when the previous episode aired in December. So this is the intent of this episode is, hey, we've been away for a while, so let's just like do what we normally do so you can sort of remember what that's like.
Yeah. Right. It's resetting the sort of status quo to just kind of ease you back into this show as it wraps up.
Yeah.
And I think it's that and the fact that, I mean, because of the nature of our show, like we like to really dive into things like theme and like long-term arcs. That often means that the second half is like, yes, and then they continue doing the thing that we just talked about.
True.
Like the Ned and Chuck stuff is just more of what it was last episode. Even though it's fleshed out in interesting different ways and has more background to it. I want to start by talking about the Olive stuff and the whole Olive kidnapping stuff.
Great, let's do it.
It's a really weird subplot. Like, I do like it because it's focused on a main character. It's focused on a main character I like, and all of the characters in it are nice. It does the classic Pushing Daisies thing of like taking a pair of like cartoon villains and then making them really, really likable. Especially just by being like, hey, they aren't villains. That's really simple. But there's something about like Olive's like main backstory plot now is either she got what she wanted because she was like a spoiled rich kid, or her parents didn't care enough about her, so she kind of like let herself get kidnapped. That just feels, it feels like, all right, I don't know, something about like, what does that say about Olive? That these are the two things that we now know about her childhood.
What does it say to you?
Well, let's do the English class thing and think about them holistically. Her getting what she wants is the reason that she it's part of the reason she feels a lot of tension with Ned in the present, and the fact that like she's not getting the fairy tale story that she wants so badly, and then her like not feeling loved by her parents explains the same thing as like you felt unloved by your parents and you like sought their affection by putting yourself in danger. Is like, well, that explains a lot of like how she relates to other people and how she wants to be loved the way we all do, but in sort of heightened ways. Yeah.
It seems like it is in line with Pushing Daisies being a show about how our parents fucked us up by accident.
100%, yes.
Whoops, made you that way. My bad. And it feels like what it is.
Stories like that always make me really, like, not depressed, but kind of anxious, just being like a single or two human beings like did their best and then like slipped up in a couple of fundamental ways and then like made a person with a huge flaw.
Yeah, it just happens to everybody.
Yeah, it's being a parent sounds hard. All the parents out there, great. Thank you. You're doing great, I hope.
Yeah, love y'all. My mom's gonna visit me in a couple weeks, so that's fun.
Mama Magellan.
Mamma mia. Anyway, the thing that kind of struck me about this Olive flashback is it felt, again, I had the same feeling I felt when we learned that Olive was a jockey, which is like, we're kind of arbitrarily just giving Olive an event that happened in her past. Like, all of Ned's flashbacks are rooted in, he was at the school for boys, and like when he was at the school he did this thing, or like this is when he first learned this part of his power or something. And so there seems to be a logical connection between all the pieces. Where like Emerson, when we saw Emerson's past, yeah, of course he was solving crimes with his cool mom, and that's why he solves crimes now. But with Olive, it was like, yeah, she was a jockey, and oh yeah, she got kidnapped one time. Like it feels more disjointed and random in a way that I didn't love.
Right. What is this combination of overall? Does this combination of facts give us much about her? I don't think so. Not really. It doesn't give us or it just feels so scattershot, like you said.
Yeah, that's the way to put it. It doesn't feel like there's kind of a unifying theme to Olive's past, I think is what bugs me about it.
Right. So I mean, again, I did like those guys a lot. The guys that were her like kidnappers, because I mean, they just remind me of like, I don't know, like fantasy characters who are just like old and charming. And they start out as like these bumbling. What's the movie with the face? Home Alone. It seems like they're just these Home Alone.
Yeah, they do have that kind of vibe, don't they?
Yeah, like the Home Alone villains, just like, oh, they're dumb, but they're kind of lovable, but they're really dumb. And they by the end of the episode, when her whole thing in this episode is also she has convinced them that her and Ned are together.
Yes.
So she gets to play this like version, I guess a simulacrum, if you will, of her like desired future, of her dream, and getting to live it out and have people like approve of it and talk about it like it's a real thing. And Ned has to play along too, so she gets to like play the way a kid would.
Yeah, she's playing house.
She's playing house, exactly. And they're like planning the wedding and all of this stuff, and then it eats at her. And she's a person who very much values like people being real with her and not giving her the runaround. She because it's related to like last episode, how she feels like people are not telling her everything, and now she's like, well, now I can't
her. Yeah.
I can't do that to other people, so I'm just gonna be honest for once, and I'm gonna tell everybody what's going on. She just kind of blurts it out, like she's honestly, she's done that kind of thing before, and I enjoy it every time because it's like very believable.
Yeah, that's something that I appreciate about Olive, is that things do not stay secret with her for very long. Like anytime, Ned has no problem keeping secrets because his whole life has been about that.
Yeah.
And Chuck, her new life is about having a secret. But for Olive, every time that she's been saddled with somebody's secret, it has eaten at her and been emotionally difficult for her in a way that it is not for other characters. And so even though Olive has like been deceptive in ways that are similar to other characters, she's the most honest of the crew, because I can't think of a single secret that's been entrusted to her that hasn't come out by this point. And so that's something to appreciate about her. She's really the moral center of the show in some ways.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So I end up liking Olive a lot, and the people don't. I appreciate that nobody like leaves and gets mad. I mean, do they? I was a little bit foggy on that, but it didn't seem like people were like extremely disapproving of the lie on her part.
Well, they didn't have a lot of time to really think about it because the police were outside, and it's like, whoops, got to deal with this now.
Oh yeah, criminals. Forgot about the fact that my weird uncles are criminals.
It seemed like Lily didn't believe it at any point, and then Vivian, I don't know, was kind of like, okay. I was surprised that those guys weren't like more mad at Ned, but I guess that's fine. I don't need people to be mad at each other. It's okay.
I have every other TV show for that. I had nothing to say about the murder plot because it felt like my eyes glazed over for 100% of it.
With the window dressing and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
I get it. I think Constance Zimmer is good. My favorite part of it is when the narrator, like they've met all of the suspects, like they're in the window shop or whatever, and they've met the assistant, and they've met Coco, and they've met the other people, and then the narrator says something like, the killer was taking a long, hard look at them before they cut to commercials, but it cuts to everybody. Like, it's the silliest, like, we're not telling you until after the break. Like, every single character that has been named in the episode so far is in this room looking forward in the ultimate fake out.
Yeah.
But there's just it's. I feel like I've just come to understand Pushing Daisies' murder plots. It's always like the second or third person introduced. It's never the first one. It's usually that simple, and the motive is either money or love related, as it usually is in these kind of stories.
Yeah, I was not like super taken with this plot. It was fine. I like some of the performances. I thought the window displays were really cool looking.
Yeah.
Like the escalator one that we see before Constance Zimmer gets chopped in half by a freaking escalator.
Yep.
I thought that was beautiful. But then the rest of it, yeah, I totally was not paying attention to it very much.
That shot was really dark. They're just like, oh, we're all like looking into a murder, blah blah blah. Look who that is. Woo, woo. That's a dead person.
Yeah, that's like scarring. If you, Alan,
Hi.
saw a person who has been bisected by an escalator, you would never forget that. You
Totally.
would like dream about that every night.
Yeah, but it carries the weight it's supposed to though, because like that's a messed up thing that happened, and that's propelling them. But they don't like go like, oh, that's so terrible. She was a good person or whatever. It's just like, oh, we knew her for 5 minutes, so we have to move on and like find the killer. It's motivation for the characters, but the shot is definitely like, whoa. I wrote here it's very Joanna Gruesome because I'm hilarious. The coroner comes back. I missed the coroner. He's actually out of his office for once. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Him and Emerson continue to have beautiful tension. I'm just gonna go ahead and headcanon what the writers were planning, which was the whole like him and Emerson were gonna have a thing.
Yeah.
Or he was gonna have a thing for Emerson. I'm just gonna take that as
Sure.
pseudo
That works
fact.
for me.
What is this whole thing here? Wow! Shout outs to Olive for vomiting the truth. Yep, that's a great part. I said there was a lot of weird like musical cues in the murder plots. It seemed like they were like escalating music as characters were introduced to be like, oh, this person's a big suspect. Like that's the game you play when you're doing this kind of story. Is here's all these people, everyone has a motive, but really who's the one who really did it and why? And like that's the show. But I think if Pushing Daisies was just that, it would be extremely boring. If it didn't have this like Olive subplots or Ned and Chuck, and if it was just like detectives solving crimes, then it would be one of the less good ones of those.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I would love to talk about Ned in this episode.
Yeah.
If you're interested in that. Because I feel like we get some insight into how Ned is shitty that is important for us to reckon with. Because the way the last episode ended, he and Olive were like about to die, and
Right.
she was like, "I love you," basically, or she's like, "You're. I just want you to look at me the way that you look at Chuck, and you have never done that." And then Ned was like, "I wouldn't say never." No. And so then this episode starts and the narrator's like, Olive read about sentence structure and the use of the double negative. And she has this textbook that's like, double negatives. What the fuck is the deal with those things?
Yep.
And she's like trying to suggestively use double negatives to mess with him. To be like, I don't hate this pie. And then Ned just sort of rolls with being engaged to her, and makes a comment later that really pisses her off, where he was saying that it was nice to like try it on. The idea of being engaged to her. It's nice to try it on.
Yep.
And so I think that just demonstrates something that's true of Ned that's probably true about a lot of people, which is that he likes being liked.
Yeah. Hi, hello.
Yeah, and I think he likes the idea that Olive is in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't want her to stop being in love with him, even though he doesn't really want to reciprocate that. So, yeah, he's going to say little things like, well, it's not that I've never looked at you that way. And he's going to be like, oh, maybe I could kiss her in this weird role play that we're doing. It's bizarre. I mean, do you think it constitutes, not that like cheating is a thing that means something universal, but like, do you think that constitutes infidelity, that Ned is like pretending to be engaged with Olive, and like Chuck knows it's going on,
Yeah.
but she's talking to Emerson, and she's like, I'm worried that they're gonna like hold hands, and he's gonna get the physical things that he can't have with me. And it's like smash cut to, they didn't frame it this way, but cut to like Ned and Olive are kissing. I don't know, there's something about that just is gross.
Oh yeah. Well, so my personal
it seems
opinion,
manipulative on Ned's part.
100%. My personal opinion is like that is a form of infidelity. Yeah, infidelity, textbook definition: the action or state of being unfaithful to a spouse or other sexual partner. Unfaithful, yeah, kind of. But he is, like he said, she knows, and it's
Right.
for a purpose. But it's the line where he says like I like trying this on. That feels
Yeah.
like this is the closest thing that he would have gotten anyways on this show to doing that. So he might as well have just been actually like they might as well have been having sex. Like they're just,
Right.
and I know there's still a line to be drawn there, but it just feels like, if anything, I like that we're getting a lot more negative feelings from Ned now, because it's the end of the show, and I think it's really bold to like in your midnight hour be like, no, but actually this protagonist that we've like kind of had you like this whole time is bad.
Yeah.
Like other shows don't always do that. They often either have like the inverse, like the Farscape thing, where it's like this fucking dude, and then by the end you're like, I must protect John Crichton, or it's the Nudazoo thing where they're never good, and the show wants you to like them, but it never works, ever.
Right. Well, I mean, Ned's not like, I think we have to distance ourselves from the sort of like bad guy versus good guy thing.
Yeah, he's not detestable. He's just becoming. He's got faults.
He's becoming, a real person
Mm-hmm.
who is making choices that if he was your friend, you'd be like, buddy, I don't think that's a good idea. You
Exactly.
shouldn't be doing that. That is like a manipulative thing, and you just enjoy that she likes you, and you're just kind of like playing along. And that's not so great to do.
Either him or Chuck. I think it's him has the shot where it's like Olive is in the restaurant with Randy, and we're gonna talk about Randy.
Yeah, at the end of the episode, you're saying.
Yeah, where they're holding hands, and then they're like, oh shit, jealousy. Forgot about that whole emotion.
Yeah, the narrator's like, yeah, the feeling he was feeling was jealousy. Da, da, da.
Dun, 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 dun.
Which, I don't know. In that moment, I was like, oh, I don't.
Well, like, is that what we're getting now? Is like the final arc of the show is going to be Ned has to learn to deal with being jealous of other people's happiness? Like, it feels like a weird order to do things.
Yeah, I think the thing that bugged me is that the show intentionally was not explaining what he was jealous of.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like he's jealous that someone else is with Olive.
Right.
But maybe he's like jealous that someone gets to have physical contact, or he's jealous that she doesn't like him anymore, but that doesn't mean that he wants to be with her. I don't know. It's all fishy. That's the kind of thing where I would have not minded it if it was a longer arc in a season. Like if this was a longer season, like a 20 episode season or something, and this back half, the arc is Olive and Randy are dating, and Ned is like trying to figure out why he's jealous. I could vibe with that and want to watch that for a while, but knowing that the show's about to end,
Exactly.
it's like that's one too many things to put in at the end, and now I'm going to be doubting the like happy ending that you give me. So that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, what worries me is that now we're gonna maybe have one of those finales where just like it's just wrapping things up and there is no like plot. It's just like, well, we have shit to take care of, guys. We gotta go. But I mean, we don't know. All I know is that the finale, people have mixed opinions about it because of how it did feel kind of rushed according to people. So
okay,
it's likely that that's totally what we're getting, which is something, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any stray notes on this episode?
Yeah, I got a few. You bolded some of them. That's nice of you to do.
I did, yeah. Though I didn't write too many notes, so I was bolding some of yours.
Yeah. At the beginning, Ned he's making all these pies with fresh ingredients, which is cute, and he's trying to figure out how to cook that way. He says, "I don't like giving funny names to the pies. Does it not seem disrespectful?" It was cute that Ned can eat his own pie, and he's talking to Emerson about it. He's like, "Oh, maybe I'll get fat now," which maybe not the best line, but it was an endearing moment where
Exactly.
Lee Pace has a mouthful of pie. And that's why in the previous episode, when they ordered stuff from Olive, Chuck and Emerson ordered pie, and Ned just ordered a coffee. And I'd never thought about that before, that if Ned took one bite of his pie,
all the fruit in it would die
in his mouth.
Yuck.
And I never thought about that. Here's a question. What is dying when Ned brings that fruit back to life? Like, what is the cosmic balance of that?
Shouldn't they have answered that in like episode 1 when they were like, and he does the thing where he makes fruit come back to life? That felt like the time that they should have. This we shouldn't have to have this question now. It was really surprising when I saw that. I was like, oh, wait, what? Probably like other fruit in their root, because they've explained that it's like proximity based, right?
Yeah, but then my question, I don't know. But then, like, does a fruit have life? You know what I mean? Does a piece of fruit have life?
Well, he's bringing fruit back to life, when he touches dead fruit. I mean,
but then
it is magical, because you also brought up later, like when he brings he brought Constance Zimmer back to life, and you were like, is he like?
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother thing. Like, are they invincible when they're brought back to life? Because she's like cut in half,
right?
And she would have just been like, "Oh, I'm bleeding more, and my legs are gone, and I'm dead again. Goodbye."
Right. Well, they talk about that, because then there was the guy who had the like metal pole through his head, and I think dim sum lose some.
Yeah.
And it's like, you shouldn't be able to talk. You have a whole stick in your head. This won't work. I think that's like they have to hand wave that a little bit.
Right.
It's magic. Like they have like enough life energy in them to talk and think consciously. That's exactly how much they have.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on this fruit thing. Like, if he's bringing fruit back to life, that means that an equal amount of fruit is dying. So then, like, I guess he could bring that fruit to life. But then that just means that he has to keep getting fresh fruit. So then why is he baking with dead fruit? Because doesn't he want dead fruit because it's cheaper or something? I don't get it. Anyway. Not going to think about it so much. For some reason, early in this episode, what's the name of the actor who plays Chuck? What's her name?
Anna Friel.
Anna Friel. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anna Friel's accent was shining through.
Yep.
In some words at the beginning here, like the way she said overboard. I don't remember even how she said it, but
overboard.
Shining through.
A little bit of overboard.
Yeah. Randy's back in this episode for some reason from Frenemies, not Frenemies, from Friend Corp. What's that episode called? Frescorts. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And his arc is that he likes Olive and he's pining for Olive, and so he's meant to be a sort of foil for Ned and a sort of like consolation prize for Olive at the end of the episode in a weird way. Because her jail dads are like, hey, that Ned guy doesn't like you, but what about this guy who's here and driving the truck?
He exists.
You might as well. He seems to like you. And she's like, oh, cool. Yeah, definitely. Which, again, reinforces what we talked about when we read that email earlier. The idea of like, oh, this man is doing a service for me. Perhaps I should like give him my romantic attention.
Right.
Yeah, so that's sort of icky.
Icky sticky.
Yeah. Wasn't Randy's whole thing in Frescorts that he was like in love with his roommate who was his Frescort and then became his roommate?
I was never clear. I was just thinking about this. I don't think it was ever clear explicitly in the show that it was a love thing. I definitely read it that way, and we talked about it like that on the episode. But like that's entirely the subtext of it. But I guess textually, he's either bi or wasn't actually like romantically in love and just really wanted a friend. Yeah,
it just seems like him liking Olive kind of doesn't have a basis in his original appearance. But maybe I missed it the first time.
That's true. There was never a woman that he was. We had no like implication that he was either a romantic type or even like into women. There was no proof of that, I guess.
Yeah, it just seems like they needed a character to fill the spot in the story, and they just picked the guy who was the meekest.
100%.
Someone calls something chic as hell. I like that. That's fun. We have an Olive musical number in the middle of the episode because she's feeling a strong emotion. And so that means she has to sing.
What was the song again? It was like a popular song.
Yeah, I recognized it. I don't remember what it was.
I'll look it up while we continue.
Yeah, look it up. It's sort of a bummer that the mystery wasn't that engaging because it was a Chuck Emerson plotline, which I feel like we don't get to see just the two of them hang out very much.
Emerson and Chuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello by Lionel Richie.
Yes.
Weird, because it wasn't even like you kind of expect it to be like a parody or something, and then she just totally sings exactly that song.
Yeah, it's just that song.
Yeah, okay.
When Chuck and Emerson are hanging out, Chuck says to Emerson, "Peep this, playa," and Emerson says, "Don't do that.
Don't do that."
She says, "Sorry."
Yeah.
I like that. Olive says the line to Ned at some point, "We need to back off on the PDA because Vivian's P's and Q's have gone AWOL, and I can't take much more of what I just took before I'm DOA."
Ooh.
So somebody had fun writing that line.
Someone loves initialisms.
Yeah.
And acronyms. AWOL. There you go.
Ned's...
No one would correct. Sorry, no one would correct me on that, but I'm correcting myself.
I'm glad that you know the difference,
Mm-hmm.
and are that intentional about it. It was weird to me that Ned's arc in this episode ended up being like, I want to use my superpower more.
Yeah, they talk about Superman a lot.
There's like a Superman connection where he talks with Randy about superpowers, and then Randy's like, nobody, like people that have superpowers don't not want to use them.
Right.
It's like, sure, but Ned's superpower does have a lot of complications with it.
Yeah.
To the point that it isn't unreasonable for him to say, yeah, maybe I'll just use fresh strawberries when I make my pies.
Yeah.
That's not crazy.
And I'll just not solve the murders like this or something. Like I can just work around this. Also, sorry, Randy. I'm actually a character on the show, but every superhero doubts their powers. That's every single...
that's the whole thing.
That's the whole deal. Great power comes great responsibility. That's it's on the can. It says that. They never want to use their powers.
I don't know. So that was a little odd. And then Ned has this triumphant moment where he brings a rhino back to life to beat up the cops. And he's like, yeah, I'm Superman.
Dude, yeah. I was so tuned out by that point. And then I came back and I was like, Jesus Christ, we have a bad CG rhino in the episode now. And it's filmed entirely from like a house, like a top third floor window of a house. And you're like, okay, so it's not close enough that it looks terrible, but like still a CG rhino.
Yeah. So I don't know. Ned's on this weird power trip with his superpower.
With his powers.
I don't know about. And then so because he's waiting till the end of the episode to use it, of course, this one time him bringing people back to life gets them the answer to the murder. Whereas usually it doesn't get them the answer
at all, right?
Yeah, so he should just wait till the end of the episode every time. And that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the last note I had in mind was like I tuned out, and then a rhino was throwing cop cars, and this show is not what I thought it was anymore. That's kind of some... Like, from a writing perspective, that's a little bit of like, all right, guys, we're getting close to the end of the season. Like, what's something fun? We have a little bit extra money. What do we want to do? Like, this is a very silly, fantastical mystery show with fairy tale elements in it, but I still think a rhino rampaging through the streets and knocking over flipping cop cars is like it's too much for the show. Let's tell the teens what we're watching next week on the final episode of DaisyChatz.
All right, teens, gather around the teen fire. Next week, we're watching the last 2 episodes of Pushing Daisies. They are episodes 12 and 13 of Season 2. First, we're watching Season 2, Episode 12, Water and Power. Lila Robinson, played by Gina Torres, a beautiful grifter from Emerson's past, resurfaces, revealing a painful secret that Emerson has kept hidden all these years. So I guess probably it's his daughter's mom.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Now on the lam for murder, Lila promises Emerson a quid pro quo if he clears her name.
Exciting.
Does that mean that she's going to trade him his daughter if he clears it. That seems like a lot. Okay. Then we're watching season 2, episode 13, the final episode, Kerplunk. In the series finale, the past becomes the present when one half of the Darling Mermaid Darlings' arch rivals, the Aquadolls, played by Wendy Malick and Nora Dunn, is killed. In order to find the murderer, the Darling Mermaid Darlings must come out of retirement with Ned as their manager and Olive as their stylist. Chuck, of course, cannot participate. Olive gets close to Sid, with whom she shares her experiences in gender discrimination, what with him being a male synchronized swimmer and her attending Vassar on a jockey scholarship. Jesus. But was Sid jealous enough of the headliners to commit murder?
Probably, I would hope not.
I don't know.
Wendy Malick, you may recognize if you are my friend Magellan as Pacha, the wife of Pacha, Chicha from The Emperor's New Groove.
No.
That's what she did. Pacha's great. Isn't Pacha someone famous? Who was his voice? John Goodman. Yeah. And then Nora Dunn's been in a lot of stuff. Yeah, I always like looking into the older actors and just being like, what did you do that I know?
Yeah.
And it's either musicals or cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can send thoughts and comments over to chatspod@gmail.com or at chatspod on Twitter. That's CHATZPOD. And Magellan, where can people find you online?
They can find me online on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUKE. They can also listen to another show with my voice called Adulthood at adulthood.simplecast.fm. Alan, what about you?
I forgot to mention the important one. If you want to toss us some money,
yes,
we got things going on over on the Patreon, patreon.com/chatspod. Definitely check that out and consider backing us, because we have a new show launching very soon around probably the same day as this one, if all the cards lay out correctly. What are we calling it? Chatz Nights.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Facts were these.
Facts for these. $2 a month gets you commentary chats, right?
Yeah. It's like our film commentary.
Every month we do a commentary on a film. What are some of the films that we've done, my friend?
We've done the One Piece film Gold. John's first experience with the One Piece franchise.
Yeah, you get to accompany me on that journey. We just did the Mortal Kombat movie coming up. I'm very excited. We're going to be doing, should I say it?
I can't believe you've done this to us, but yeah, you got to tell the kids.
We're going to be doing Ants, the film that decided it was fun for kids if their animated ant hero was played by Woody Allen. So that's going to be a trip. And then, of course, we're open to other suggestions, and we've got some other fun ideas for that. And one of those every month. The other thing that we're doing, yes, is Chatz Nights. You might ask, well, what is Chatz Nights? So what do? You go out and hang out at night?
Kind of, but it's not on the internet.
I guess on the internet, yeah. It's just like B-roll kind of thing, like discussions that we have before we start recording, or things that we want to talk about that don't fit into our discussions of a TV show, or like episode formats that we want to try, or games that we want to play that don't fit into the regular show. So it's kind of a testing ground for us of things that we're interested in that just don't fit anywhere else. And if you want to hear those will probably come out like bi-weekly, like every other week or every month, or we're still sorting it out. But that's $5. You get that, and you get commentary chats.
Right. If you're ranking us to $5 at this point, and some people already are, thank you. Then you hopefully like us enough that you'd like to hear us kind of goof off for a shorter amount of time in a much, much less structured way. So yeah, check those out.
Indeed.
And it's good stuff. Peep it. If you want to follow me online, I'm not on social media right now, but you can listen to me on 2 other shows. One is Fireside Friends, found at firesidefriends.net, where you can listen to my friends Ryan, Katie, and I talk about pop culture. Or you can listen to The Garnet Wager, which is a weekly show that I do with my friend Six over on scanlinemedia.com, where we watch the Korean game show The Genius and discuss it in depth every week. We're actually like 2 episodes away from finishing season 2. No, we're not. We're like 3 or 4. It's where we're getting there. It's really exciting. There's a lot more to it that I can't really explain here, but it's a really exciting and dynamic show that I care a lot about. It's good stuff.
That's great. Love it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of DaisyChatz. Keep on living.